I go, woo! And they go, woo, woo, woo! Because they know they've been with the world champion. Woo! I'm the kip-feeling, wheeling-dealing, limousine-riding, woo! Jet-flying, son of a gun! They call the nation. To be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo! I'm the man.
It was something I was really good at. And then once I realized how good I was at it, then it became a disease.
You're looking at $13,000 of 18-karat gold with diamonds around it called a Rolex watch.
When you think of Ric Flair, you think of a diamond-studded, jewelry-wearing, jet-flying son of a gun with at least 2 women in his limousine at all times. But the story of the Nature Boy has a surprisingly dark and humble beginning. Ric Flair was born on February 25th, 1949. A cold day in Memphis, Tennessee. Gray skies cast their shadows on the hospital as Flair's mother signs a form and cries. It was standard procedure. Everything went according to plan. With the nurses bribed and the adoption papers signed, there was no stopping the strange woman who snatched the baby from the nursery and walked nonchalantly out the door. Flair was a victim of child trafficking, one of 5,000 babies taken by the Tennessee Children's Home Society. His mother never got to know him. She was told her baby didn't make it. Conditions in the so-called children's home were horrible. Staff frequently resorted to drugging unruly children. Some were even hung in dark closets or beaten. Those ruled too ugly or too old for adoption were starved and left out in the sun to die. Flair escaped the grips of death and was sold to a wealthy family across the country for an exorbitant price. This event forever shaped the life of the Nature Boy. Richard Flair grew up in Minneapolis. His father was a gynecologist, his mother an actress.
They had my birthday, and then they had what's called my anniversary every year. Like I was born February 25th, and my anniversary was March 18th, the day they adopted me.
Flair talks fondly of his parents, but he says he couldn't really relate to them, and they couldn't relate to him.
I didn't do them justice because they were such good people. I was just wild.
He would often misbehave. At 15, he got busted trying to buy alcohol, and later that year, a police officer stopped him on his motorcycle because he was underage. Ric's parents took him to a speech therapist for his lisp and bought him expensive braces, but Ric wouldn't wear them.
I'm sure that I, on a regular basis, disappointed him every day.
Eventually, his parents had enough and sent him to Wayland Academy, a strict boarding school out of state. As an infant, child traffickers had robbed him of his identity. Now, he was abandoned by his own family.
They didn't have time to see Ric, and I guess they didn't want to be bothered. And why did they send Ric away? I guess they didn't want to be bothered.
As a young man, Richard Flair had a deep-seated longing for attention and validation. When he got into wrestling, he worked hard in pursuit of the spotlight, in pursuit of attention. But tragedy struck once more before he found success.
We were flying to Wilmington, North Carolina, and unbeknownst to us, the guy was only carrying half a tank of gas.
The altimeter measured 6,000 feet when the double engine stalled. At that moment, Ric and the others lost consciousness. The pilot tried to level the plane, but it was too late.
To the best of my recollection, the first thing I remember was the ambulance technicians or medics.
Due to the injuries sustained in the crash, 2 of Ric's colleagues had to end their wrestling careers. The pilot responsible for the fueling error that caused the accident died in a coma, as Flair laid in the hospital bed with a broken back.
I wish I could tell you that it humbled me, and it has when I sit here and talk about it. But back then I was so hot to get back into business and so eager to be a star.
Ric fled into wrestling, inspired by the nature boy Buddy Rogers. He dyed his hair blonde and started acting like a peacock at a garden party.
Just, started living the life of the nature boy. I took my insurance settlement and bought my first new Cadillac. That sums it up right there.
Wrestling sexiest superstar, please welcome Ric Flair!
This kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, is the greatest wrestler alive!
Flair says he'd always wanted to be the man, rather than just any man.
You can buy these anytime you want for about $10,000, $11,000. I got 15 of them. You know why? Because I'm the world heavyweight champion.
His brilliant persona and slimy looks, combined with his acting skill and in-ring finesse, made him a star. He was a total package and an instant sellout. But this new character came with a dark side.
The Nature Boy wasn't a wrestling character. The Nature Boy was me.
Flair's newfound success allowed him to invest in his character. He bought a limousine and lived as lavishly in private as he did on screen. One day, his parents came to visit him at his new $2 million mansion.
And my mom and dad were coming to town. I was so proud to show them. And my mom and dad walked in and looked around and said, my dad goes, what the hell have you done? And I'm thinking he'd go, God, this is really cool. He just said, who needs all this in their life?
I got life pretty much the way I want it. You understand that?
I got a limousine sitting out there a mile long with 25 women just died for me to go, woo, all night long.
Flair had everything. Flair had money, he had prestige, he had the girls.
In the 80s? Oh, most definitely. Everybody wanted to be me, every man, because I had the nicest clothes, the biggest cars, the biggest house, and the more women.
The 80s are often called the greed decade, or the era of excess. Glorified materialism, status symbols, and the pursuit of success featured prominently in the public consciousness. Questionable personalities dominated the television landscape, a perfect mold for the Nature Boy character to become a cultural icon, especially in the U.S.
He is the idol of a lot of big-name athletes. A lot of their swag came from watching Ric Flair do promos.
Diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing.
Growing up watching Ric Flair, he was very inspirational to myself and a lot of other hip-hop artists because he represented what we wanted to be. We wanted to be Ric Flair. We wanted to be flamboyant and, the kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing. We wanted to be all of that.
They all want to be like the Nature Boy, but there can only be one.
I knew him before he was Ric Flair. He was Ric Flair.
Ric married his first wife, Leslie, in 1971. But he admits that he didn't take his wedding vows seriously.
He wouldn't come home more and more.
Wrestling was fun for me. I couldn't wait to be on the road. I couldn't wait to be with the guys. I went home, I was bored.
With the women and drinking and partying, and that took over.
Let me tell you something. If you're wrestling and you're in Hutchinson, Kansas, and you're going to spend the night there, I'm going to find something to do. I'm not going through that night by myself.
Drinks! All the champagne! Anything you want! It's on the world show.
When Flair came into a bar, the first thing he would do is buy everyone drinks. Then he would flirt with the women and strut on the table. WWE announcer and backstage personality Jim Ross recounts spending a night drinking with the Nature Boy.
can't we just go in and order a couple of drinks? You buy a round, I'll buy a round, and have a little conversation, call it a night, but it's got to turn into a party.
If I couldn't go out, I was miserable. When I was in working in an area where there was no nightlife, all those little towns, man, I was miserable.
But more I got to know him, it was just that he needed companionship. He needed somebody with him so he wouldn't be isolated.
I remember getting home, and I just remember my dad backing out of the driveway and was like, I'm not coming home.
Well, I wasn't wanting to be away from my family. I just, once you're the world champion, what else is there for you?
Rick doesn't love Richard Flair. I don't know that he's ever taken the time to get to know him or to find out who in the world he is.
I was never home. From 1972 till 1999, I was never home.
Rick's children say they would get things from their dad when he came home, but what he couldn't give them is time. He often said he would come to an important basketball match or debate tournament, but in the end, he never showed up.
I do get angry. How could you ever neglect your kids like that? So that's for sure.
I am the first to admit I was really selfish about just wanting to be Ric Flair.
How many women do you think you've been with?
Realistically, 10,000 maybe. Isn't that terrible?
This guy that ran with every woman that would have him from the time he was 15 years old is the best wrestler in the world today. It's my life, it's my heart, it's my soul.
The more successful Ric Flair became, the more Richard Flair became the nature boy. On screen, he was a braggadocious heel. People wanted to see him get beat up. But many fans aspired to be like him, to have that kind of money, and that knack for women.
The girls?
I'm not changing my lifestyle. I'm 4 or 5 women every day of my life.
But all that glitters is not gold. Ric Flair was a sexist character in a sexist business.
That's one of my women right there, baby. Now you see the one with the nice tan and the pretty blonde hair? I'm not talking about one of these fat ones that come to cheer you. I'm talking about that woman over there, you see?
He takes liberty to define what it means to be a woman, by his standards.
If there's a woman out there, what's to find out? Just where she stands in the world of femininity, she'll find the horseman one time, baby.
Flair's problematic behavior has been well documented. There are multiple reports of Flair running down a hotel hallway, wearing only a sock on his genitals. Jim Ross recounts an incident where Flair exposed himself to 2 women in a car who then took off running. These incidents paint a dark picture of the nature boy, according to legal documents of his divorce proceedings. At least 3 of his 4 ex-wives have physically attacked him, likely as a way to retaliate for past emotional harm. Flair acknowledges and regrets his inappropriate behavior. However, he draws a clear line stating that he never forced himself on anyone in any way.
At Delta, the girls call me Cool. At Eastern, the girls call me Slick Rick. And all the other women around the world just say, oh, there goes the man.
May 5th, 2002. Ric Flair was 53 years old when he boarded the WWE private jet for a flight that would later become known as the plane ride from hell.
Sometimes as a joke, Ric Flair would put on his robe, not wear anything else, and walk that aisle like Ric Flair and then open it up. He could move his hips and twirl it.
It was something that he did that people wanted him to do for so long that he never knew when to stop.
He had me back against the back door, and I couldn't move. That was very uncomfortable.
I remember him crowding the flight attendant, like in the aisleway back there by the bathroom where it's like real skinny and you can't fit two people through there and stuff. I remember him like crowding her and, trying to make her touch him and stuff.
He was spinning around his penis and he wanted me to touch it, and he took my hand and put it on him. I don't want to say scary because that might sound too dramatic, but it was a moment of great violation, discomfort to have a person put their hands on you without you wanting them to do that and to not let go when you ask them to. And to create a level of fear when you're there to do a job, and you're doing your job, and now you have to be afraid that you're going to get hurt.
Heidi Doyle later took legal action against WWE, and a settlement was reached out of court. The plane ride from hell remains one of the most controversial scandals in wrestling history. Flair was not the only wrestler who acted out during this booze-fueled nightmare. Others received harsh punishment at the hands of WWE management. Curt Hennig and Scott Hall were fired, but Flair got off with a slap on the wrist.
For lack of a better term, he was a made man. And he was such a high-level made man that he got a pass. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. You're listening to it, folks. You decide. You got a pass.
I don't feel that his intent was to rape me. But what he did was wrong. It was wrong, and he goes to sleep that night, and yet that night I didn't go to sleep.
Flair maintains that what supposedly happened between him and the flight attendant did not happen. Triple H once called him a consummate liar. WWE couldn't afford to fire Ric Flair because a lot of their stars were leaving the company. They needed Flair and his drawing power.
Jim Herd had started trying to retire Flair in 1990. They thought he was too old. And, 10 years later, he was still the guy they were going back to. Whenever they needed a rating, whenever they needed a great match, they'd still go to Flair.
Around the turn of the millennium, Ric Flair suffered from low self-esteem. He was getting old. WCW had plans to change his gimmick, cut his hair, and call him Spartacus. When he came back to WWE in 2001, he continued playing the tried-and-true Nature Boy, but he had lost his touch.
I would kind of see him and he was kind of a shell of himself. He had, his confidence was gone, and I would try to talk to him a lot and pull him aside and try to build him back up.
Always kept my self-confidence level. He would never let it drop. He said, "You know who you are. You know who you are." Then I got comfortable with myself again.
Flair was going through financial troubles at the time. He had tried to diversify his income and open a gym in North Carolina, but his business partners were dishonest and allegedly cheated him out of a lot of the invested money. He was also struggling with gambling addiction, which he described as a part of his lifestyle spiraling out of control. Multiple divorces, asset divisions, and monthly alimony payments of up to $20,000 also contributed to his overall debt. Exemplifying his failure in personal finance, he invested around $200,000 in a business venture called Ric Flair Finance. However, the concept behind it was completely illegal, and the online financial company was shut down by state authorities for non-compliance with financial regulations. To make matters worse, Flair had also racked up several millions in debt to the IRS until they started seizing his earnings from WWE. Vince McMahon knew of Flair's financial troubles and often lent him money, especially to help with divorce-related expenses and alimony payments. Ultimately, Vince advised him to declare personal bankruptcy in 2008, but Flair wouldn't hear it. Through his success in wrestling, the Nature Boy had developed a kind of pride that McMahon knew all too well. He was determined to work hard to clear his debts, especially the $800,000 he now owed his boss. All this culminated in his legendary retirement match at WrestleMania 24.
I hated retiring. I missed the day I retired. I was sick the next day. I was just, my God, it's over. What are you doing?
At a crucial time in his life, when he had to find a place and a purpose outside of wrestling, Ric faltered. Triple H built him back up and told him to remember who he was.
I'm the tip-stealing, wheeling-dealing, limousine riding, woo, jet flying, son of a gun. They call, woo, the nation on. To be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo, I'm the man.
Ric fled into wrestling because it gave him stability.
Just like retire. Like you're 60. Like live your life.
Ric doesn't love Richard Flair. I don't know that he's ever taken the time to get to know him or to find out who in the world he is.
Even now, in his 60s, he kept wrestling.
You know, Ric is my friend, for better or worse. I knew he couldn't stay away from this stuff. And again, I knew when they wanted him to go that he didn't want to go.
He needs the money. He didn't save.
First, he wrestled Hulk Hogan in 4 increasingly brutal matches in Australia. Then he went to TNA.
I am Ric Flair. 16 times the greatest world champion of all time. Whoa, 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 whoa. Son of a gun that could kiss any woman right here, even that fat one, and make her cry.
Over the years, the Nature Boy became not just a wrestling gimmick, but a way of life for Ric. It was this personality that had allowed him to gain the attention and validation that he craved from an early age. Ric Flair became a pop culture icon, and Richard Flair ran with it. Now he can't live without big cars and diamond jewelry.
Diamonds are forever.
But the initial shine has worn off. Times are changing.
It's the talk of the town today. A WWE Hall of Famer was asked to leave a Fort Wayne bar last night, and it lit up social media.
Everyone started doing the woos, and so we all knew who was there.
Only 5 minutes after arriving at the bar, Ric Flair was calling the bartender a dumbass and a fat ass for not changing the TV channel to show a golf tournament he wanted to watch. In 2012, he was banned from the Hard Rock Cafe in Orlando for acting inappropriately. Flair allegedly had a habit of lifting up waitresses' skirts and making crude comments. Ric himself relates these incidents to his chronic alcoholism. Ric's youngest son, Reid Flair, also struggled with addiction. Like his father, he started drinking as a teenager.
Reid, my youngest son, he was an amateur wrestler.
Reid wanted to be my dad.
It'd be such an honor to me to be able to work alongside my father. Not only my best friend, you know, my biggest hero as well.
But Ric Flair is anything but a hero. One time, he took his son to a strip club and served him alcohol.
Just one of the guys, you know, and I mean, you know, you're 21 years old, what do you tell him? You can't hang out? What, do you stay home? You can't, he wanted to come. He did, you know.
But he wasn't 21. The strip club incident was brought up in divorce proceedings that place Reid's age at 18 or under. After the divorce, Reid and his sister Ashley had $1 million house to themselves all summer. They partied every night.
It was just not normal.
In January 2013, Ric accompanied his son to Japan to support his wrestling career. Reid was good, so good that 2 months later, he was set to debut for the NWA, the same promotion where his father had made his name in the 70s. One night, They sat down in Ric's hotel suite to watch the NCWA wrestling tournament. Reid got drowsy and nodded off.
I could tell he had taken some pills, but I'd seen it 1,000 times. I just put him in bed and said, Jesus, why do you keep doing this?
What Ric didn't know is that his son had also consumed black tar heroin that night. When he put him in bed, Reid was already dying.
Hello?
Hi, sir.
Hello?
The Charlotte Police Department. Did you need the police up there, or what's going on with him?
He don't call me.
Okay, sir.
He don't call me. It's purple, please.
Sir, we do have police on the way. Let me get you over to the medics as well.
The next morning, Ric went to check on his son and found him unresponsive. He made a frantic 911 call, but it was too late.
And they said he didn't make it. I said, what? And they said he didn't make it, Ric. And I was like went up in shock. I had so much fun with you. And I regret the fact that I sometimes was your best friend instead of your dad.
To deal with the tragedy, Ric drowned himself in liquor. He blamed himself for his son's death, even though he had done all that he could to save him. The ambulance came right away. It wasn't the first time they were called to check up on Reid.
We're all on a first-name basis by this time because we'd been there before.
Reid's drug addiction had put him on life support multiple times, but this time, there was no saving him. His death severely affected his sister, Ashley.
She was paralyzed. They were like this.
I don't know. Even to this day, I still think I put it in a drawer and I just closed the drawer. Like, how do you... Your brother, right? I talk to him sometimes, but I think it's just hard that I'm getting older and he's not. Like, he's the same age.
We love you, darling. Hey, handsome.
65 days after his son's passing, Flair appeared visibly intoxicated on the WWE 2K14 panel, where he spoke out of turn and went off script, embarrassing himself and the company. Triple H, a close friend at the time, saw how much he was struggling and went out of his way to help him.
I was really worried about him at the time. I had to get on the phone with him and literally say, just shut the f*** up. Against his will, so to speak, forced him to go get help.
Ashley found another way to deal with her grief. She fled into wrestling.
I know for a fact I wouldn't be where I am today if he hadn't died. I know that sounds really messed up, but that was his dream, not mine.
As soon as Ric got sober, he went back to WWE and threw all his weight behind Charlotte.
When she commits something, she commits to it at a different kind of level, man.
And how is Sasha and I supposed to be successful when there's no competition at NXT?
Make no mistake about it, what you see in Ashley Flair is not an individual performance. Everything she does is tag teaming with her brother.
You have no idea how much joy I have. I'm living vicariously through her as we speak right now. Nobody could ever carry on a legacy for anybody better than she carried on.
As one of the 4 horsewomen, Charlotte was at the forefront of the women's revolution.
Why aren't we talking about my athletic ability? Why are we talking about my look?
Ric often praised her talent and athletic ability, but he continued to participate in problematic segments on TV. In 2016, he interfered in Charlotte's match with Becky Lynch, forcefully kissing Lynch to distract her. The scene was seen as inappropriate and out of touch, and was later removed from the archive. Flair then got into a legal dispute with WWE over his trademarked catchphrase, "to be the man," which he felt should extend to the man. He wanted to pass the trademark on to his daughter. When Becky Lynch started calling herself the man, he felt his legacy was being appropriated.
You can't be me. You can't do me. And I'm cutting you off right now.
I let it go because I think it's really sad. Because this is a legend. Ric Flair is now jealous of me.
In 2021, Flair was involved in a controversial storyline with Lacey Evans that played on his reputation as a womanizer, though he reportedly felt uncomfortable with it. When Vince McMahon retired due to the severe allegations of sexual abuse and human trafficking, Flair was upset, but not for the reasons you may think. He called McMahon his hero and said he doesn't care about the allegations against him. This response indicates that Flair's views on sexual misconduct in the industry haven't changed since the plane ride from hell. His drinking habits haven't changed much either.
Ridiculous what for? Ridiculous dickhead. No, ma'am, I'm gonna give you $1,000 tip just to say to him, kiss my ass.
Flair is a functioning alcoholic, but decades of addiction have taken their toll. In 2017, Flair suffered a ruptured stomach following a night of binge drinking. Doctors gave him a 10% chance of surviving.
Yeah, I mean, there's no ways I should be alive after some of the stuff I've done.
He stayed sober for a year, then relapsed again. At least he got off Xanax, the drug involved in the death of his son, Reid. Rick says eating weed edibles helped him get off pills. In recent years, Flair has found success with ventures like Woo Energy.
The best thing going today.
Woo! And Ric Flair Drip, his own line of cannabis products, which he launched in collaboration with Mike Tyson.
Ric Flair Drip, go woo on a bitch. 5790, spit the coupe on my wrist.
His influence remains unchanged. Rappers and athletes celebrate him as a hero.
There's so many diamonds around your Rolex, we can't tell what time it is.
That's big time bucks.
One of 180 made, S63, AMG package, has a chip in it, 1,000 horsepower.
Flair is still going to the gym every day.
I want to make sure that as each year goes by, that I can do what I did when I was 23.
But no matter how hard he pushes himself on the treadmill, his age is catching up with him.
Then I had to have 4 different surgeries on my heart to get the right kind of pacemaker on.
What keeps you motivated?
Vanity, 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 vanity.
In 2022, he announced one last match.
July 31st, Nashville, Tennessee. As promised, Ric Flair will walk that aisle one more time. Guaranteed this time to be the last time.
I'm not gonna retire. I'll never retire.
It's not worth it. I am not the man anymore.
Eventually, Rick swallowed his pride and let Becky Lynch use his catchphrase.
And then I apologized to Becky Lynch. I walked up to her and said, "May I speak with you for a minute?" And I just said, "I'm sorry." Just never got to where it is.
Rick never sought out his biological parents. His brother reached out to him in 2017 saying Rick's real name would have been Fred Phillips, but it's too late now. Rick wanted no contact with his biological family. He is Ric Flair now, and that won't ever change.
Thank you all for making me who I am today.
Despite his outward bravado, Flair has shown a surprisingly fragile ego and sense of self in recent years. This contradiction suggests that the Nature Boy character may have been a coping mechanism to deal with deep-seated insecurities stemming from his childhood experiences. Ric Flair exemplifies, like no other wrestler, the power of fame and the perils of fortune.
I use Rick as an example sometimes with young talent of like, you can have it all and end up in a really precarious spot.
No, I'm not going to better some of my career after this guy. But he made good choices that way.
Lately, WWE has changed its stance towards Flair, as they're trying to distance themselves from his past misconduct and rectify their own mistakes. Following the controversy around Flair's involvement in the plane ride from hell, WWE deleted an episode of Storytime that showed Ric Flair exposing himself to a flight attendant. They also pulled all Ric Flair-themed merchandise from the shop and replaced him in their signature intro.
Nature Boy Ric Flair, synonymous with greatness in professional wrestling.
Look at the total influence that Ric Flair has.
I'd almost rather be remembered as that guy in the 80s and early 90s. I think, and this is my take on it now, I think I probably turned the negative into a positive.
Ladies and gentlemen, one moment. Take a look at it, learn to love it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna be yours for a long, long time. Woo! Woo!